my interview with Brad just like really hit. Like it's got over 2,500 views now.
Wow.
Don't be a person who says, I have an idea to do this, or I really want to do this, but then never actually do it.
This is my friend, Jake. We've been working together over the last year to build out his podcast called Bizpirations. Now, yes, he's gotten a lot of views on YouTube, more than most of my episodes have gotten, and that is a testament to building this thing out from the very beginning. Meaning, we created a strategy before we went ahead and launched this podcast. On top of that, Jake was extremely ahead, so he always knew what was coming out, when it was going to come out, and that is just part of the strategy that we use to launch this successful podcast. He's approaching 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. He probably already hit it by the time you're watching or listening to this video, and we're going to go into that today. So if you're launching a podcast, whether it's for business or more for content or maybe brand building, it doesn't matter what it is. Today we're focusing on the visual aspect as well as the YouTube side, because that's what everybody wants to know. Should I launch a podcast or a YouTube channel? In this case, we did both with one podcast. So let's dive into Jake, his story, and more importantly, what you can take away from this and use for your own podcast. Jake, thank you so much for doing this, man. Excited to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
I just made an OG podcaster's mistake and didn't put my headphones on, so I'm about to do that right now. I was just saying, man, you created your whole show with AI. It's incredible.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing what ChatGPT can do, and a little bit of Dolly, $20 a month, and next thing you know, you've got professionally edited, overlaid videos spit it out for you.
Incredible. Yeah, it looks better than real life, I would say, even,
100% better than real life.
That's how we do it, man. Exactly. All that coaching was we just focused in on that, it was ChatGPT, essentially.
Yeah, I think you should almost change your LinkedIn banner to be the ChatGPT podcast creator.
We were just talking, man. I know.
Hard work.
It's AI and books, man. That's the future. Everything wired, Neuralink.
Yeah, exactly. I'm way behind with my AirPods in. At least your headphones are wired. But I probably will have my first book published before you do to grow my business.
Yeah, that's what you need. For digital businesses, you need physical books. Not even Amazon. We're going Barnes and Noble.
It'll be like, no, you can't even do that. You got to be like peddling your books
you're
on the
street
corner
seller.
with a box and a cross.
Exactly. You just put them in those little book boxes, where people exchange books. That's the full marketing strategy. But jokes aside, man, this is a lot of fun. I mean, listen, we've spent the last, year essentially building out this podcast, and it's I've mentioned you so many times now, but we're going to get to the show. We're going to get to the podcast, and it's not your average podcast, and that's why this episode is going to be really special. But can you talk to me a little bit about, I guess, what is the visual component of this podcast is very important, and this isn't going to start like a traditional episode where it's like, tell me about yourself. We're going to get to that. But what is why was it so important to you, / what was the opportunity you had to really leverage the video side and the visual component of this podcast?
Yeah. So for me, the podcast was really an afterthought. It was more so I'm creating this video. I have the audio. So how much of a lift is it for me to put it on a podcast platform? So a couple advantages for me. One, like physical location. I live in Costa Rica. The people I'm interviewing are in Costa Rica, and like the access to the people, as well as having a high quality video production component that I'm able to outsource here physically. So, I pick Benjamin up in the morning and we physically go to the people's places to shoot the video. And I mean, if you've seen it, it's not only is the production quality high, but like every place is really cool.
Dude, I mean, I know I've met a few people who are from Costa Rica. I've never obviously been there, but I also had no idea how beautiful that country is. And you have captured even just the slice of it that you've captured. It's just incredible. For people who are listening right now, we'll have all the links to the podcast so you can go check it out. But I'm not kidding. Like your episodes, like you said, yeah, it's not really a podcast. It's an interview series, right? And this gets into a point that I won't spend too much time on because I'm caffeinated. I'm trying not to talk too much, but it's the definition of a podcast, man. And it's changing because while you didn't set out to make a quote unquote podcast, you do have one, and it's on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on 25 plus platforms that nobody even uses. And it's also on YouTube, right? So the podcast traditionalists will say, well, it's just audio. It's like, look at people on their phones. They're not reading. They're watching TikToks. They're like on Instagram. You know what I'm saying? So that's just the modern age. So I am in the party of, hey, man, you can make your own definition of what a podcast is, but the reality is it is kind of whatever you choose it to be. And your audio is also good, right? So there you go.
Yeah, I think a prime example is my sister. She watches them when she's like walking and running on the treadmill at the gym.
Yeah, that's it, man. People don't read blogs on the treadmill. That's what I've been saying for years. You know, it's like
the days of the magazine. I mean, I remember like seeing people like reading magazines on the treadmill. That
seems even sketchy, where it's like, how fast are you going, you know? Yeah. But no, for real, like when I was, so like in the beginning of this, when you just had some episodes and we were, you know, so you're a coaching client. We've been working together, like I said, for about a year and basically building this podcast out over that time, right? So we had a super far out launch date. And, you know, let's dive into that a little bit. What made you want to take your time with this podcast, and why do you think that is a good idea for people to do?
Yeah, so I didn't want to rush. I didn't want to feel overwhelmed, have anxiety about getting episodes out. So, you know, I launched in the first Saturday in January of 2024. I started my first video beginning of May, by that first Saturday in May.
In 2023.
2023.
Yep.
And when I launched, I had 12 interviews done, final cut, edited, and another 5 in the hopper. But it really saved me because my video guy, you know, today it's April 3rd, and I didn't get any interviews done in January, February, and now my video guy is taking a production course in Mexico until June. And I've got enough video to like keep me going until then. But when he gets back, it's like, all right, like now we got to get back into it here because, you know, it's getting down to not having enough episodes to backfill.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say like, that's a quick tip in terms of video guys tend to disappear. I don't know why, but they're very, I would say video editors, videographers, they're so talented, but they are the definition of freelance. Like they take freelance seriously if they don't have an agency. And see, you did the split, which I think this is the ideal split though, just to hone in on this. You hired coaching and help, but then you managed the small team. In this case, it was you and an editor to go ahead and do the production side. So on top of you waiting and not rushing this and taking your time, you also hired some help, but did it in a way that I would recommend, which is if you were a bigger business, it would basically be external consulting, internal production, right? So can you talk to me about that split a little bit too, and like why you also wanted to invest in some help around the podcast?
Yeah, so I wanted something like, so one, I guess I went to you because you knew what you were doing. Also, again, even when I came to you, I wasn't even looking to do a podcast. Like that wasn't the primary focus. And I'd still say it's like really not. But you helped me like with the launch process and getting the ideas, helping craft something that's not going to suck. Like the questions that I was going to ask, you were like, yeah, those are okay, but what if we do it like this? And you asked some of these questions. And so there was that side of it, and like doing it correctly and doing it well. And then from the video side, like I'm not a video guy. I'm not a photographer. Like I've made a couple videos here and there, but like I'm not as good as Benjamin is. So he was really the other piece of the puzzle that was missing. And I found him because he had done some work for a friend of mine, Chris, who I interviewed. And I think that the most important thing, though, is like we got along with each other. Same reason why you and I are still working with each other. Like I could forget the podcast thing. I was like, cool, you and I, we vibe, we get along. I see the value here. And so not only are you going to help me create a good product, same thing with Benjamin, like him and I get along really well. And he's got all the equipment, the expertise to make sure that what I'm putting out is a top level product.
Yeah, man, I would say that's such an important one. And also, I'm just going to be like super honest and candid because that's kind of partially why I'm doing this series too and interviewing folks like yourself, which is I'm also not for everybody, right? So me and Jake vibes, and from the beginning, from call one, we're still working together to this day, and it's gone beyond the podcast, and we'll get into that as well. But there's also folks who I helped them launch and they went on their way, and that has forced me to figure out who I'm right for and not right for. And now what I'm doing, and I was just talking to my partner about this last night, what I'm doing now is I'm giving you my personality in the content so you can kind of judge before we even work together on like, is this a guy, like he's pretty East Coast, like he talks fast, so I have to listen fast. And, you know, it's a lot of strategies and opinions and ideas, and, you know, it's a new idea and so that vibe, and that's a testament to podcasting. What podcasting does is it allows people to prejudge you, which is good. That's good. You need people to make judgments about you before they go ahead and decide to work with you or not, because you can control that perception essentially by putting yourself out there. So that's my quick soapbox there. You though, Jake, also chose to highlight, we're going to get into your format now, highlight these people, highlight these guests. So can you tell me a little bit about why you chose to do that? And let me finish the question with something that's not a question, which is something I'm trying to work on. Why didn't you include more? Was it on purpose that you don't include as much of yourself in this because you were the interviewer, but was that on purpose? And do you see yourself including more of yourself later as well?
Sure. So I guess first question, I've met so many cool people living down here with cool stories that go against the status quo. The whole idea of the podcast is, you know, people who left something to do what they really want. And I've met so many people with cool stories like that I wanted to share them. And it was just like an idea. Like there really wasn't a business idea behind it at that point. It was like, I think this would be cool. Let's see where this goes. And as far as myself, when we first started, I told Benjamin, like, don't put me on the camera.
Yeah, I think I remember this.
On the camera.
Yeah, I remember this.
And the first interview, I wasn't on it. The second interview, we did like a cool shot where you can like see like kind of like my shoulders a little blurry, and then like it focuses on Chris. And then the third interview, he like set a camera up, pointed at me. And at first I was like, what is this guy doing? Like, but it looked so much better when he did it. Like, of course, like he knows what he's doing. Like he's there to make it look good. I'm there to make the person comfortable, get into it. but it looks so much better when I'm also on it.
But was that like a fear thing or a nervousness thing? Or like, if you could go introspective with this, like, why do you think you didn't? I assume it's just because why everybody else wouldn't want to be on camera, all the reasons they have in their head. But do you know why?
So my initial answer is I wanted it to be about the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Subconsciously, I don't mind being on camera. I don't mind public speaking.
Yeah.
Prime example, I went to this guy. He's a gardener. He did some work for me once, invited me to his birthday party. I'm the only gringo there. And people are giving speeches in Spanish. And he like asked me if I would say something. And there's probably like 50 people there I've never met. And I was like, yeah, man, just give me the microphone. Like I'll say something.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like that doesn't bother me. I think it was really, I wanted to be about them. But from a production standpoint, for it to be about them, it also needs to be about me. And then we tie in the B-roll to make it entertaining.
Yeah. So how much did you learn about production and post-production in this process too? Because like you said, you made a couple videos, but I would assume now after you've done 15, 20 episodes, you also have these thoughts in your mind around, oh, this can be shot like that, or, oh, that's a clip right there. Or does that kind of, has your mind, I guess, evolved now to becoming a podcaster?
Yeah. As I'm doing it, things get said. I'm like, that'll hit, like need to scratch that. I need to ask that question again because you're not answering my question.
Yeah. So how do you do that too, man? Like, how was the balance? What was the learning curve like? Because this is what we come across a lot, which is doing a lot of planning and then actually having to do the thing. And interviews are really hard. It's not like a job interview. It's not. And most people, dude, have been on the other end. Most people have been on a job interview, right? Like recruiters have a hard job, right? HR people have a hard job. Interviewing is not easy to do. Then you take the podcast, take that into account. So yeah, how was that learning curve? Because I think this will help a lot of people who, I mean, Jake, you know who we're talking to. We're talking to CEOs, we're talking to experts, we're talking to marketers, we're talking to people who, yes, if you talk to other people, you're a public speaker, right? But getting down on your podcast and then talking to an audience that you can't see, and really trying to balance all these things is difficult. So how was that transition from what you're really good at to becoming an interviewer?
Yeah, so really setting the stage of what my expectations are of the other person. Man, I've gone down, my videos have gone down from sometimes taking over an hour for the first shoot. I try to bring it down to like 30 minutes. And what I preface with is like, we're having a conversation. I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to answer it. If you find yourself saying, as I said before, or as I mentioned, like, no, don't say that. Just answer the question.
Yes, the same.
Just answer it.
We all commit it.
And when it gets long-winded, I'll let them finish.
Yes.
Or if they get way off track, sometimes I'm like, all right, hold on. Like, we're disconnecting here. Like, let's get back on track. And it's all recorded and edited, so the people don't know that. Like, that's like Benjamin's job.
Yes.
He asked me after the first interview, he's like, so what do you want at this time and this time and this time? And I'm like, no, dude, like, that's why I'm paying you. Yeah. Like, you're the guy with the vision. Like, I'm just here talking. You're the one that needs to make it look nice and entertaining.
Dude, if you have to micromanage your editor, not because of them, but because of you, or maybe because it's just not the right fit, then they're not the right editor for you, for the most part. Unless you're a video master, right? Like, let's take this for example. I just had a new editor edit a YouTube video for me, right? I gave him 9 different small changes I wanted, but I didn't tell him to change the entire video, right? Because that's, again, like you said, that's what I'm paying him for, right? So, but that's a really good point where you have enough to worry about. If you're a podcaster, and you're the talent, even if you're the interviewer, you're still part of the talent. You have enough to worry about, which is what you're going to say, what they're going to say, the flow of the conversation, and then the listener on the other end. And you're the ambassador for the listener. There's nobody else whose job it is to support the listener than the interviewer. So if you're getting caught up in anything else, you're pulling attention away from the thing that you really need to focus on, which is that person who's listening on the other end.
Yeah. It's like you said, you're paying someone to do a job. Let them do the job. Don't micromanage them through the whole process.
Yeah. And so actually staying video adjacent, I'll say. Did you expect these YouTube videos, switching from what we're talking about just specifically to YouTube now? Did you have any expectations around YouTube? Because I know it was a video podcast from the start, right? But like, did you just, what was your game plan? Was like, I'm just going to post them on YouTube? Because we did something different that I want to definitely talk about.
Yeah, I was just like, let me just put these up on YouTube and see what happens. And a bunch of them didn't really hit. And I also promote it on social media, started doing shorts. And I don't know if it was the title, the thumbnail, but my interview with Brad just like really hit. Like it's got over 2,500 views now.
Wow.
And like that, the YouTube algorithm just loved it. I think in the first week or so, 1,700 came from YouTube recommendations.
Wow.
Granted, it said from drunken idea to dive business, Brad Stevens tell all, but
yeah, but that's the point, Jake. The point is that you optimized it for the platform, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we ended up doing. So there's a few things here, but the two things that are extremely important, I'll say three. So the first one is just a more broad statement, which is play to your platform. YouTube is not the same as Spotify, is not the same as LinkedIn, is not the same as Facebook, right? And we can go into how you leveraged all these different platforms. And then diving into YouTube for a second, titles and thumbnails. When I say titles and thumbnails, it does not mean like you trying to figure out what the best title or thumbnail is to represent that episode. It's optimizing the title and the thumbnail for the YouTube platform. Which, if you aren't that into YouTube, you're probably not going to know how to do. So I think that was a good, that was a back and forth between, because we worked on that for, I think, a couple calls, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the one I just put out for the girls, the title is We Got Scammed in Mexico.
Yep.
That one's got over 1,000.
Holy crap, man. That's wild. And you're telling me now, like the last time I looked, we were in the hundreds, 500, 600, 700. I'm like, oh my God, this is going crazy. And then we're getting into the thousands. It's like, it's crazy, man. And if you want to know how to do that, yes, it's everything for sure. Hey, actually, Jake, why don't we go into that? The Zoom versus podcast versus what you do. I want you to get on your soapbox about this.
I hate podcasts that look like when their video is like a Zoom call. Yep. Like do one or the other. I don't like, I put the audio out there because I have the audio, but I don't promote. Like I promote my video because that's what is good. I tell people like, don't listen to it, watch it. Because like who wants to watch something that looks like the Zoom call that they just got off of? Like if you are going to do it in this kind of a platform,
yes,
at least throw in some B-roll so it's entertaining. At a minimum. Yes. Otherwise, like stop promoting your video interviews. Like add B-roll or do it that looks cool, but like stop with the Zoom call thing. Like I am a huge proponent of Zoom call podcast interviews.
Yeah, I mean, you did what is not easy. This format, I mean, that's why, like, for me and you to logistically get together, which honestly we probably will eventually, and do something in person, dude, it'll be a lot. You would have to come back to the US, then we would have to coordinate between your being in Connecticut and me in New Jersey, and then meet in the middle or meet at a studio, and then it's a whole thing. So I'll say this, right? We have podcasts that are very successful that are recorded on Zoom. That's not what you're talking about, though. You're talking about not caring about your podcast, right? Where these people who do, like, say Wealth Warehouse, right? For example, one of our clients, over almost 100,000 downloads now. Their content, all you have to do is look at the downloads and then look at the feedback. They literally interview their listeners who become their clients and say how valuable that podcast was for them, right? In that case, you can do it Zoom. Shaq can do his podcast on Zoom, right? It's like there's examples where you can do it like that, but there's no way you would have been able to capture the essence and create the uniqueness of your show if you didn't do it the way you did it.
No. And like you said, ease of access to people, 100%. But add some more content in the video. Don't just leave it as the call. Add some content to give perspective and make it entertaining so that people will want to watch it, not only listen to what you're saying.
Yeah, that's really it. I mean, if you're going to do video, then it should be optimized.
Yeah,
that's really
video.
Exactly. And also, like, that's my point now, which is the internet is video. The internet has been text for 25, 30 years. Now the internet's becoming video based. That's just a fact. It's not even an argument. It's just, what are people watching? Video. Right? So if that's the case, then you need to be optimizing for that. So even if it is the Zoom podcast, people might love that. And then, okay, don't change it if it's not broken, right? Don't fix it if it's not broken. But then your clip that you post on LinkedIn will be edited, will have a nice title over it, might have some nice captions, right? Will be maybe a higher quality edit that you did pay $50 to $100 for, right? All of that is a touch point. Like, it all matters, right? And just when it come back to you, Jake, like, I just think your level, I know your level of quality, you just have that, you have the taste. And I think for some people, if you are a CEO, business owner, marketer, if you sell anything online, how can you look at something that's unedited and be like, yeah, it's good enough? I just don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was super important for the videos that we put together to have the B-roll, the different angles. And not only that, like the scenery, like where it was really important for me to have the background be authentic to the person. Like, I love the one that I did with the guys from Paddle 9, and it just happened with the lighting, with the row of paddle boards there. Or out at like the Eco Lodge with Kara and Leo, and like, because when you do a Zoom video, you can't take the audience with you. And when you are watching my videos, you get the perspective that you are there with us.
Yeah. And you can do this in your house. Like, not what you did. You don't have to go into the countryside and record somebody's small business in the middle of a forest, and it's beautiful. You also can do that in your home, right? Like, you can have high quality video, you can have high quality audio, and then you could have high quality editing, and it's not going to make up for that. It's not going to replace it, but it's the same level of care. And people see that.
Yeah, people see how much work goes into it.
Yes, they can tell.
And then that's what makes it.
It's very obvious. So, yes, the YouTube side. Any tips on the YouTube side, or a little bit into like what we did together and kind of what we built out, whether it's titles, thumbnails? Like, most podcasters are going to be doing video. If they've never done the podcast before, they're probably somebody's going to tell them to do the video. So starting from scratch on YouTube, any kind of, opening, just advice, I guess, before they kind of get started there.
Yeah. So thumbnail, title. I used you guys for the thumbnails. I think they turn out great. People love them. And description, I know you and I have kind of gone back and forth about. It doesn't take that, it's not that big of a lift, especially if you use a tool like Cast Magic to generate a lot of this. But then just from a strategy standpoint, so for me, I like to use opus.pro to get my shorter clips. And then even then I go in and edit them. And then when I post those on YouTube, I go in and link it back to the video that it corresponds with, which I find like that really helps. Other than that, just sharing it, inviting people to collaborate on Instagram, and then like encouraging them to share on Facebook. With Leo and Kara, most of my videos before them had like 100, 300 views. They posted it on Facebook, and all of a sudden we had like, I don't know, 600 views. Only because they did that. Like they made one post on Facebook. What I haven't done that you recommend is like go into Facebook groups and promote it that are in accordance with it. I haven't done that just because I haven't, really no excuse other than haven't done it. But that was kind of the strategy and approach that we had been taking.
Yeah, I mean, and the people will say, oh, the guest didn't promote it. Okay, well, there's a couple of reasons why. The first reason is because you expected them to.
Without communicating that.
Boom. Right? If I say to Jake right now, Jake, if I have a clip of this and it looks how you want it to look, you'll probably post it on your LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, there you go. It's like, but even if, which he's not, Jake's going to go do it. But if you don't ask that, right, then there's definitely no chance, right? So it's like, if people agree to commit to things, like I should have asked you off camera, but I know that I could do this with you because we're on this podcast and we're friends. But it's that simple. It really is that simple. And then number two, your content's not good enough for them to post. Jake, what you did and what I would advise any podcasters and content creators and business owners to do if they can is create better content than your guest would ever even create for themselves. And I'm not saying that's easy, right? But if you do it, it's going to pay off like it did for you. And another note on that, you played to the platform. You didn't just post it on YouTube and be like, the guest didn't share it. No, you went ahead and posted it on Facebook and tagged them, right? And you were able to do all these promotional steps that made the guests repost it and drive their people because you didn't rush, you took your time, and you gave yourself enough time to promote the episode, and you weren't rushing to get the next one out the next week right after you publish that one, right? So it all ties into that planning and that strategy that we started with, really. Because if you're just rushing to get the next episode out, you have no time to help that guest promote it.
Yeah, it's all about, like, keeps going back to the quality. If you're putting out quality content, people are going to enjoy it. It might take them a little while to find you, but the more you promote yourself, the more you have other people promoting you, it's only going to benefit yourself in the long run.
Yeah.
And putting out that good quality content that they're going to be proud to share on their platforms as well.
It's the same thing as when it comes to work, right? I just watched the Andy Elliott video where he was like, everybody wants to get paid more. Everybody's like, oh, I don't get paid enough. Well, you don't do more than you get paid to do. People that get paid more do more than they're paid to do, which is why they end up getting paid more. It's the exact same thing here. Do better than they would expect you to do, and you will get better results. But I think it's that belief, right? Like I got to really give you props, Jake, because you didn't know what this podcast was going to turn out to be. You knew the story, you knew the people, but what is it like to have it out now after going through that entire year of creating this thing?
Yes, it's great. And I think even the people I've met from it, I mean, so there's, you, even, I think his name is Dave. I think you had him on the show recently as well. People like Like I just did an interview for Matt McCoy, like out of the blue, he just messaged me like, hey, like your stuff. Another guy messaged me, hey, I'm sharing people's stories too. So I want to check his stuff out. And just the way that it's shifted, you know, when I first started this, I met with Justin Welsh and he gave me the idea to do a newsletter. And like that idea is out now. It works for some people. That's not what I'm going for anymore. So it's been that interest in the changes too. And I'm just excited to see where it goes from there.
Yeah, and that is such a great point too. The strategy, you want to plan changes instead of changing plans. That's what I always say. You want to be able to pivot and figure out as fast as possible that a newsletter isn't the thing and that it is a podcast instead, or it is video content instead, right? I don't care what you do. I will support it. I'm not saying when I say I don't care that I won't support it. I'm saying I will support the thing. But what I want is for you to find the thing that's right. And so and I totally understand if you don't want to go into this, but do you want to talk a little bit about how your kind of business model has evolved? Because I know you've had some life changes in this year too, but the business that surrounds the podcast and really what this podcast enabled you to realize about yourself and your own value.
Yeah. So at first, after meeting with Justin, the idea was I'm going to have these interviews. I'm going to promote it with a newsletter. I'm going to use Sparkloop to gain as many followers on my newsletter as I possibly can and monetize it as quickly as I can. It kind of worked. Like to date, I think I had like 4,000 newsletter subscribers, about a 32 to 35% engagement rate. So it was okay, but it wasn't really like fulfilling, which I think is a big part of this. So I was also then trying to offer business coaching, but found out that what I was offering was way too broad. So now I'm kind of bringing it back full circle where Bizpirations and the interviews is still going to be a series. But now it's about taking businesses into brands here in Costa Rica, like where I live, helping the people here. And I've already got plans to do a testimonial video with Brad. Once Benjamin gets back in June, we're going to line up a day with a bunch of people who have gone through his instructor course, shoot a badass testimonial video. And then those people are also people who have dive shops here that can also be candidates for the new production style business model. And will it work? I don't know, but I'm going to find out.
I love it, man. But it makes so much sense too. And just candidly too, that's what Jake and I are working on right now. Like together, we are building out this business model. What it does is a few things. It brings a company to the market in Costa Rica that doesn't exist yet, which is a video-based content company. It also brings organic content to these small businesses that wouldn't normally have it. And these are successful businesses. These are not businesses who are like, nickel and diming here. Like these are real, legit businesses with revenue who have a product or a service that works, right? And you can, if you're more interested, again, all of the links are in the description too, so you can go watch these interviews with these business owners. But back to it, man. Yeah, this literally allowed you to create a business around the passion project that you started. And like you said, full circle is really it, man. And you would not have known that unless you went out and launched this podcast. So, man, it's I love it, man. Podcasts, like my whole goal is it's shifted a lot in this last 4 or 5 years. But I really, when I say like changing lives, like I do believe that. Like I do mean that. I think the content will change the lives. I think the podcast will change your life if you do it. And you're going out there, doing the same thing and changing these business owners' lives too. So many avenues, man. It's crazy to think about this and break this down. And that's why I'm doing these interviews too. Is there anything that I didn't touch on that you think we should make a note of, or something that you want to say as well?
I wouldn't say we miss on anything, but I'd say for anyone who's thinking of doing this, just do it. Like, the worst thing that happens is it doesn't work. Like, that's it. That's all. Like, it doesn't work. Like, either if you like Ryan's vibe, like, see if Ryan's a good fit for you. It might not be, but there are other podcast coaches out there. I definitely recommend at least having a conversation with someone who knows what they're talking about. Definitely helped me out. But that thing I did with Matt McCoy, it was like, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self? And just say yes to opportunities. So don't be a person who says, I have an idea to do this, or I really want to do this, but then never actually do it. Like, get out there, do the thing, put your effort into it. And the worst thing that happens is it doesn't work. Maybe you lose some money in the process, but you can keep making money.
Dude, if I could afford to drop this mic, I would totally drop. One last question. Was it worth it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've learned a lot. I've had a lot of fun, met some great people, connections, gotten to know people that I've known for years better on a deeper level. I mean, I was crying on my interview with Karen and Leo. So 100% worth it. Just get out there. If you want to do it, do it.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. It's been a blast to work with you, and feels like just the beginning too. You know, every call we have, it's just like the energy is there. Like, we don't know what we're going to come up with and what we're going to work on. And man, I say this more and more now, which is, I think a lot of these people like you and podcasters, they help me more than I help them. So, you know, what sometimes is on one side and sometimes is on the other, but I just got to say, man, really appreciate you and working with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you as well. And just let me know your credit card information so I can start charging you as well.
Sounds good, man. We will have it'll actually just cancel itself out.
Perfect.
Jake, thanks, buddy. Yeah, let them know where they can find, what's the name of the podcast, and then what's your favorite platform for people to connect with you.
Yeah, so the podcast is Bizpirations, and you can find it on YouTube. Definitely recommend watching it. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple, but 100% go on YouTube. That's just at Bizpirations, and all the videos are up there, shorts, and definitely recommend watching it over listening.
You got it. Like, yeah, same here, man. Definitely have to watch that. Hit that link in the description or YouTube.
Like and subscribe.
All that stuff, man. All that stuff. 100%. Jake, thanks for jumping on this today. This has been another episode of the newly rebranded Ryan Sullivan Show. Yes, we do have the SEO for that. So if you want to get the SEO for your podcast name, I might be able to help you do that. So we are on every single platform, including YouTube and even the ones nobody uses. And as always, we'll see you next week. Jake, I'll catch you later, man.